What's up guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic part 1. Which is what if Naruto was forced to marry the Sand Princess part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel Anime Hub 1.2 for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The large circular chamber was pitch black, yet at the same time they stared into her eyes. She didn't falter under the pressure of the council. Why should she? They were only some of the most powerful people in Sunagakur. Staring at the unseen men and women, she stood waiting. A voice broke the silence, sending slight chills down her back. You have heard the rumors that the alliance with Konoha is about to expire. As a sign of good faith we have decided that there should be some formal agreement to work with the alliance so that peace can continue. The cage agrees. I am the will of the council, what would you have me do? Another voice spoke, one of kindness, yet a harsh tone hidden underneath. The council has decided that there will be a marriage between one of the Leaf Nin and a Sand Nin. It was decided that you would be representing the honor of the Sand Nins. What the hell, you have to be kidding. I have been here all of my life, Suna is my life. How could you do this? Releasing a deep breath, the Sand Kunoichi tried to relax, but how could she? If it is the will of the sand then it shall be so, her unshaken voice said. I hope you all rot in hell. However, it has not been determined who you will be marrying, added the first voice. Bowing, the Kunoichi made for the door behind her. Then why did you agree to it, fools? What do you mean I am going to be married? Yelled our number one knuckled-headed ninja, pointing at Tsunade. You heard me correctly, you have become a pawn in the politics of the council. I promise I tried to fight it as much as I could, but the council still has more power than I do. They are the ones pulling the strings now. Resting her elbows on the desk in front of her, she broke her hand up to her face studying Naruto. Isn't there a way out of it? Naruto pouted. Unfortunately there are only two options. Either you kill yourself or run from the village, either way you are dead. She had to play her ace in the hole now. Naruto, this is going to be an IGN ment, and I hope you don't fail me. Quote. But Granny Tsunade, he whined, you know that I never give up on a mission, that is my way of the ninja, pulling out his usual foxy smile. Tsunade smiled to herself, she had him there. He would never refuse to complete a mission even if he didn't like it. Besides, she didn't know why he was so upset, he still seemed upset over what happened a few months ago when he came in here. It was nice to see him smile again. His voice pulled her out of her thoughts. Hello Granny Tsunade. What did I tell you about calling me that? Her anger getting the better of her. Naruto cowered in the fear. Do they know who the sand is sending? He poked his fingers together in slight emberment, from wondering if he knew her. Unfortunately they haven't told me who it was. However, you should know that she will be here in 3 days' time and the ceremony will be 2 days from then. Naruto looked at her in horror. Shit, I have to clean up my apartment. Naruto made his way to the door. Naruto, turning to look at Tsunade, she threw something at him. Catching it, he looked at what she had thrown. It was a set of keys. Giving her a questioning look, she explained. Those are the keys to the Namikaze estate, it is yours now. Looking up at her in surprise. Why wasn't I given these earlier? Jiraiya and I thought it would be better if you didn't receive the estate until you were old enough. However, it looks like it will have to be a little premature. Once again Naruto exited her office. Tsunade could tell it was bothering him, but it was for the best. As Naruto made his way through the streets of Konoha, he couldn't help but feel slightly sad. It had been a few months ago when he was with Sakura. Things had been great until he had finally done it. He had brought Sasuke back from the clutches of Orochimaru, and life seemed to be great. He and Sakura had been dating for a few months. That night they had decided to celebrate by having a few cups of sake during their romantic dinner. They had retired to their bed a little earlier than usual to make love. Sakura had moved in a few months after they had started dating. It was while they were kissing. Hey Naruto, I want to tell you a secret. Yeah, what is it? I still love Sasuke, but I don't want to tell you, because you really helped me through the times he wasn't around, she giggled. All Naruto could do was look at her. She had been lying to him from the beginning, she had used him. Hey Sakura, I will be back in a bit, I forgot to do something. Getting out of bed, Sakura whined as he left the room. The next morning Naruto woke up on the top of Hokage Monument with a splitting headache. When he sat up he remembered why he had come here. When he had reached his house he found Sakura sitting at the table. When she saw him she got up and walked over to him. Naruto, where have you been? Naruto looked up at her, searching her eyes. Why Sakura? Why? He felt like he was going to cry, but he held the tears at bay. Why what? Why do you love him? All he has ever done is cause you and me pain, yet here he is and you love him. She gasped. Had she told him the truth? Then the previous night's events came back to her. How could she have done that to him? Naruto had made his way to the back room. Looking back at her he said one final thing, go to him. After he had closed he had fallen on the bed, shedding his tears into the pillow, that smelled like her. He heard her pounding at the door. Naruto, please let me explain, slamming her fist against the wood. Please. She began to cry, she felt horrible and unworthy. Sitting at the bottom of the door for hours, she finally gave up. Collecting all of her things, she left the spare key on the table. Taking one last look at the house that had been so welcoming to her. I'm sorry Naruto, I really am. She turned and let the tears fall freely, she couldn't hold them in. Naruto awoke from his stupor to realize that his feet had taken him in an odd direction. He was in front of a small gate. Looking at the base of the wall he noticed that there was a fire pattern. This had to be the Namikaze estate. Putting the key into the lock, he opened the door. Inside was a large area for training in. Behind it there was a large house that looked like it had multiple wings to it. I see you have found the Namikaze estate, well done. Quote. Naruto looked over his shoulder. Standing there was Jiraiya, smiling at the youth. What are you doing here, pervy sage? What have I told you? Stop calling me that. Naruto stood there unfazed. Anyways, I thought you might like some company walking around here. Tsunade told me about the arrangement. Besides, I wanted to say sorry for not telling you about this place. It's okay, I guess it would have been lonely with so much room. Smiling and scratching the back of his head, they made their way across the training grounds. Upon opening the front door, Naruto's mouth dropped. Inside the main room was a fireplace that was situated in the middle of the room. Surrounding the fireplace were some comfy-looking cushions. As he walked in he noticed how large it was. Wow, this place is huge. The Hyugas don't even have a room this big. That's because the Hyugas never really liked to entertain company. I remember all of the parties your father threw, he was quite the guy. Jiraiya smiled, he remembered old memories. Naruto walked to the door across from the main entrance. When he opened it he was greeted to a fairly large courtyard, which had a small pond and some trees growing. Naruto couldn't begin to surmise what else this house had in it. About an hour of looking around the house he had finally come to the back entrance. Opening the door wide he was surprised to see a field of GR that after about a few hundred meters sloped down to a river that stood outside the gate. Who knew that this was here? This place is enormous. So did you find everything? Jiraiya asked with a smile of amusement. I think so. Did you know that there is a personal hot spring here? How do you think your father got all the ladies to come home with him? Smiling at Naruto's reaction. What do you mean my father was not a pervert like you? Naruto yelled angrily at his sensei. You're right, but he still had many lady friends. He refused to be with most of them until he met your mom. I remember it, but why listen to me? Let's go have a drink. With that he left Naruto standing there. Turning to the view of the outdoors, he exhaled. This is all mine, it's too big. Tamari knocked on the door to the Casecage's office. Come in, came a calm voice from within. Opening the door, Tamari walked to the middle of the room and bowed. Looking at the back of the chair. How many times do I have to tell you, Tamari, you do not need to bow to me in private. Turning the chair around, Gaara inspected his sister. I am sorry Casecage-sama. Quote. Gaara just released his breath in frustration. Shaking his head, if you are here to try and get me to stop the marriage then I am sorry, but I had no choice in the matter. The council decided that this was the best course of action for the people of Suna. Quote. I understand, but I want to know what you think. Looking into his sister's eyes, he saw her waver. I really don't like it, but I really don't have an option in it. He didn't like it at all, but there really wasn't anything he could do. However, I have heard a rumor that your betrothed is one of great import to the Konoha. The wheels inside of her head began to spin. Great. I bet it is the Uchiha kid, just what I want to marry, a traitor, but a good-looking one at that. Or it could be that Hyuga boy, he wasn't too bad, just the eyes are really freaky. Is there anything else, Tamari? Her brother looked at in concern, or at least as much as Gaara could muster. No, I was just lost in thought. Then she felt the sand surround her. Looking at Gaara, she smiled. This was his way of showing affection. I am sure it will be fine, if not I will personally bring you back. The look he gave her made her feel more confident. Thank you, little brother. The rumor of the wedding had reached everyone's ears by the day that the Sand Nin was supposed to arrive. There were people standing near or in the general vicinity of the gate since the night before. By noon, dark figures appeared on the horizon. Villagers rushed the gate to catch a glimpse of the cage and hopefully of the person to be wed in 2 days' time. When the news reached Naruto, he made his way to the gate. The crowd parted for him. His recent fame had captivated even those of the older generations. He wasn't despised anymore, but he still didn't have their trust. Standing in the middle of the gate, Naruto noticed that Gaara was leading the procession. Behind him were Tamari and Kankuro. Tamari looked troubled and Kankuro looked as odd as ever. Behind them was a large gathering of the Sand Nin, who had come as close friends to Tamari and Gaara, even though Naruto didn't know this. Smiling, Naruto addressed Gaara, "So Kage-san, what brings you here?" "Uzumaki, what did I tell you about calling me that?" said Gaara in his usual tone. "What did I tell you about calling me Uzumaki?" Holding his hand out, Gaara raised his hand and they shook. Some of the villagers whispered things like, "He knows the cage. He is really something." Scratching the back of his head, Naruto smiled. "This is rather awkward. Gaara, how about we go to my place and talk? I am sure you, Kankuro, and Tamari could use a rest." Gaara merely nodded. When they reached the front gate, Naruto pushed open the door. Tamari and Kankuro gasped, "When did he get this place?" Gaara looked slightly amused. "So they decided that he does deserve respect that has been held from him for many years." Tamari couldn't believe her eyes. This place was huge. How had he gotten this place? Almost as if reading her thoughts, "This place was the home of my family. I only just found out about it a few days ago." Tamari was curious. "Who was your father, Naruto?" Smiling uncomfortably, "That is a story for another time." Turning to his guests, "You guys can stay here anytime you are in town. It is rather lonely here, but I think I will learn." He smiled, but Tamari couldn't help but notice the sadness in his eyes. While in the main room, Naruto explained a few things to his guests. There are bedrooms on the right side of the courtyard, and a hot spring in the third door on the left side of the courtyard. Everything else I will let you find on your own time. Quote. Upon hearing this, Tamari got up and headed off to the hot spring in need for some relaxation. As she left, the boys settled down on the cushions. "I am sure you have heard the rumors of the treaty expiring soon." Quote. "Yes, I have. Is that why you are here?" Gaara nodded. "Have you heard what else is going on? There is something that is also part of the treaty. I guess you are talking about the arranged marriage." "Yeah, I know all about it. I thought it was supposed to be kept a secret." Gaara was slightly worried. Though he didn't show it, he did care for his sister. "Do you know who Konoha has decided is going to be married?" Quote. Naruto couldn't help but fig it, me. Kankuro spat out the tea that he had been drinking. Gaara looked unemotional, but in his head the wheels were turning at an unbelievable pace. "So I don't have to worry about the stupid council. They made a good decision. I can rest easy if Tamari is going to be married to Naruto." Kankuro was the first to recover. "Oh, Kami, this is funny." Gaara had shut Kankuro's mouth with the sand. "You know the rules on arranged marriages for this purpose. The names can't be revealed," Gaara said in a lethal way. Thinking that their reactions were because of his position, he asked the question that had been bothering him ever since he had woken up this morning. "So I am guessing I would be wasting my time trying to ask for the name of who I am supposed to marry." Gaara nodded, releasing a deep breath. "How troublesome." Bowing to the two Sand Nin. "Make yourselves at home. I will be back in a few hours after training." With that, he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Kankuro looked at Gaara. This is getting more interesting by the instant. Gaara just stared at the fire burning. Tamari slid into the hot water. The muscles in her legs began to relax almost immediately. The steam that rose from the spring hung thickly in the air, making it almost impossible to see anything. Letting go of a breath that she hadn't realized she was holding. So I am going to be married in 2 days. Swimming to the far end of the spring, she rested her back against the wall. I wonder who it will be. Her thoughts began to go through all of the Leaf Nin. The first person to come to mind was Sasuke. I could never marry a traitorous bastard like that. When she had found out that he had left the village 4 years ago, she couldn't believe it. He didn't seem like the type to run away, but when she had heard why he had left, her anger had gotten the best of her. She remembers yelling at Gaara like it was his fault. It had ended when Gaara had merely said, "It isn't our problem, let the leaf deal with it." Still, she couldn't help but feel bad for the other Leaf Nin. Eventually she got over it. The next person who came to mind was Shikamaru. He had been nice during the time he was her guide, but he was always so depressed and it was really unsettling for her. Rock Lee was a nice guy, but it was clearly evident that he really liked Sakura. It wasn't that she didn't like bugs, but Shino was really odd, he almost never talked. Kiba was a nice guy, loyal and friendly, but something about having all of those dogs was unsettling. She liked dogs and had nothing against them, but it seems odd to her. She had met Sai, but could immediately tell he was gay. There was no question about it. Then there was Neji. He had become nicer over the years, but he still acted like he had a stick up his. Last but defiantly not least was Naruto. He was hyperactive as ever, but today he seemed subdued and lost in thought. She knew he was stronger than he let on sometimes. She had seen that when he defeated Gaara 4-year age. She also knew that he had grown up since she had first met him. She didn't mean just physically, because if it was just that, she knew he was one fine piece of work there, but mentally he had gotten smarter. A few months ago she had actually been saved by him. While on a mission he hadn't rushed in, he had just waited and somehow saved her. Sighing at her thoughts, she climbed out of the spring and wrapped a towel around her. Walking across the courtyard, she found her room and got dressed. Hitting the log, Naruto leapt back, getting ready to punch the log. He lost concentration when he heard Naruto. Turning to look at his visitor, he saw that it was Sakura. "Hey Sakura." He could see the hurt in her face as he said her name. Sakura noticed that he hadn't added the chan, but she knew that it was deserved. "Naruto, I really wanted to say sorry and..." "It's okay Sakura. It doesn't matter anymore." "No it does, I realize now that you were really always there for me, but I was too hung up on Sasuke to notice. I want you to know that I will always be there for you." Naruto couldn't help but feel a little better, but she didn't know about his recent predicament. "Have you heard the latest rumors going about the village?" Quote. Worry crossed her face. "You mean the ones about a marriage being part of the peace treaty?" "That's the one. The council decided that I would be representing the Leaf Village in the marriage." Shock was evident all over her face. How could he be getting married after them breaking up only a few months ago? To who? I don't know. How could they do that to him? It was he who killed Orochimaru and Akatsuki. She felt sad, yet happy for him at the same time. "Well Naruto, I hope that you find happiness. I want you to know that I will be there to help you anytime you need it, because only Kami knows how many times you have helped me." She smiled at her friend. It wasn't every day that one got married. She was worried that the person he was supposed to marry might find out about the Kyuubi and treat him like he had been treated by the village many years ago. He didn't deserve to be treated like that, not when he was the driving force behind most of the village ninjas. If anyone deserved happiness, it was Naruto. Naruto looked at her. He felt better knowing that she would be there for him, yet sad that he couldn't be with her. "Sakura, I want you to be at the ceremony. I know that only the families of the to-be wedded are supposed to be there, but you, Tsunade, Iruka, and Jiraiya are the only family I have." "Sure thing Naruto, how about we go to get some ramen to celebrate?" Quote. Naruto's smile grew larger. "Alright, but I get to pay." "Why should you pay? I am the one who is taking you." "I refuse to let you pay, and don't try anything like you did last time," she added threateningly. "Fine, if you insist." Naruto gave his friend a hug as they headed off to the ramen stand. You be just fine, Naruto. I know you will be a great husband. Unbeknownst to the entire village, a small group of people watching the villagers as they went about their busy lives. So brother, when do we get to have some fun? Asked a cloaked figure, a forehead plate reflecting the sun's rays. Not for a few days, brother. You must be patient, spoke another cloaked person, the voice deeper than the first. A third figure stood over the two. We have to make sure this little alliance doesn't happen for the sake of the village. This voice was commanding. The other two shook with anxiety. Yes, father, but we want to fest. Quote, it will all be over in a few days' time, my sons, letting out a small, evil laugh. Besides, they won't know what hit them. The sons smiled at their father's words, shaking with pleasure at the thought of spilling blood. I won't be releasing any new content for about a week due to schoolwork taking a large precedence over this. I hope you can wait till I release it. This day came too fast for Naruto's liking. He felt nervous ever since he had gotten up in the morning. He couldn't help but feel something was going to happen. When he had reached the kitchen, he noticed only Tamari was up. Smiling to her, hoping she wouldn't notice his discomfort, she had smiled back. So how did you sleep last night? Trying to beat back the uncomfortable silence that seemed to hang in the air. Not too well, seems today came too fast. I know what you mean, both letting out an exhausted breath. Pouring a GL of orange juice for himself, he offered her a GL. That would be nice. Naruto began to cook some eggs and bacon. Nothing better to start your day out right. Keeping his back turned to her. She couldn't help but wonder why he wasn't as hyperactive as she remembered him being. Hey Naruto, are you okay? Trying to keep her voice from showing the small amount of concern she had for him, he was after Gaara's friend. Yeah, why do you ask? His face taking on a forced smile. I don't know, you seem indifferent, trying to show indifference. I guess things are changing faster than I would like, but you know that is part of life. Here is your breakfast, I hope you enjoy it. Handing the plate of bacon and eggs to her, the rest of the meal had an air of anxiety and troubled minds. After breakfast, Iruka came by the house to escort Naruto to the shrine on Hokage Monument. The walk there was quiet and serious. You know Naruto, you can always back out now. Naruto scowled at his old teacher, Iruka-sensei, you know I never give up. I know Naruto, but once you go through with this then there is no backing down, this is a full-time commitment. Quote, Naruto might not have been the smartest kid when he grew up, but through his travels with Jiraiya he had wizened up. He had taught himself through reading scrolls and books whenever he wasn't training. He may not have always acted smart, but what fun would that be? I know, and I am willing to go through with it. Naruto flashed his foxy smile. Naruto, you have really grown up. I hope that you truly find the happiness that you deserve. Naruto, the only advice I can give you is be honest. The truth is a powerful thing. It can make a person's day, and yet has the power to destroy them. Naruto nodded his understanding. Thank you, Iruka-sensei, you're the best. He hugged his former teacher. Iruka may have been a better father figure than he could have ever known. Naruto was standing there with the Shinto priest. Dressing the traditional black kimono, Naruto kept pulling at it. If there was one thing he never enjoyed doing, it was dressing up. He wouldn't mind killing an enemy on sight, but dressing up was going too far. Looking to his left, he saw Tsunade, Iruka, Jiraiya, and Sakura standing there looking at him. I can't believe I am doing this. Well, I guess it is too late to back out now. The doors in the back of the shrine opened. Turning to see who had arrived. At first he was confused, but then things became clear. In came a young girl being escorted by a man of equal age. This was the procession of the maidens. As the procession continued, Naruto finally saw something that made him gasp and the other around him gasp. In came Kankuro, makeup free and bat hat gone, wearing a black kimono. Following him was Gaara and Tamari. Tamari was dressed in white kimono. Her face was painted lightly white and the ornamental headpiece was in hair sand-colored hair. I'm marrying Tamari. When she looked up and saw him staring at her, she gave him a small grin. So Naruto is going to be my husband, you have to be kidding me. All Naruto could do was stare back in awe. He felt slightly ridiculous, haven't not been able to figure this out before. Albeit the signs were definably very well hidden. When Tamari was standing next to him, they turned and faced the Shinto priest. who bowed respectfully to them and proceeded to begin to chant. Kneeling down, the close family turned to face the two in the middle. Naruto and Temari kneeled and listened to the priest. When he had stopped his chanting, Naruto picked up the small bowl of sake. Taking a small sip of it, he handed it to Temari, who also drew very little from the bowl. Naruto pulled from his kimono a small scroll. Every girl at some point knew what this was. It was daunting for Temari to see it and yet exhilarating for her. The scroll that Naruto had pulled out contained the words of commitment. Unfurling the scroll, Naruto cleared his throat. My bride, I promise to cherish you, be there for you, and protect you until the end of my days. This I swear with my life. He looked at Temari, she returned his smile. The priest bowed to the couple, thus ending the ceremony. Everyone stood up. When Naruto looked at Gaara, he could have sworn he saw a small smile on his face. Looking around at his family, he couldn't help but smile. It may have been uncomfortable to him, but he still felt a small amount of happiness. Boom. Naruto looked in the direction of the noise. Smoke was billowing into the small shrine from where the door had previously been. When the smoke cleared, there stood 3 people dressed in black cloaks. Did we interrupt? Said one of the smaller in a girlish voice. I doubt that. I don't think there is anything worth interrupting, said the other small person. Naruto's anger flared. Who are you and what do you want? We are the Sato family team, answered the larger one. Time to end this little arrangement. With that, he threw a kunai at Naruto, but before it even came close to hitting its mark, Naruto had already grabbed it. Nice try, but not good enough. Smiling, he noticed the small one hadn't moved. Something wasn't right. What happened next even Naruto couldn't explain, but he found himself on the floor with Temari standing over him. Looking up at her, he noticed her eyes had a hazed look to them. Looking around, everyone looked slightly dazed. What the hell is going on? Isn't love such a strong emotion? One never knows when something bad is going to happen. Cackled the tall Sato. Now if I can force the bride to kill the groom, I can get away scot-free. Temari, what are you doing? Temari, you need to snap out of it. Glaring at the little band of ninjas, what have you done? Quote, nothing much. We are experts at killing. No one is better than us. You see, Akira has an ability to take over a person's body and mind without the donor knowing it. Little Yumi is a master of genjutsu, so your little friends have no way of helping you. You are in a pickle, dear boy. What will you do? Let your bride kill yourself and friends, or will you kill your bride? Naruto growled, I'll tell you what I am going to do. I am going to kick your and your little children's too. Brandishing the kunai, he leapt for the older Sato. But when he was about to thrust, Temari got in his way. Pulling back just in time, he felt Temari stab him in the chest with a kunai. Where did she get that kunai? Staggering back, Naruto looked at Temari. She isn't herself. I have to kill those two, but which one is which? Naruto could see his vision begin to fail. Preparing to attack again. Boy, it is pointless to try to get to us. You will only kill your bride if you keep attacking, or your bride will shish you off herself. He laughed manically. Lunging at one of the small children, this is it. Once again Temari got in between him and his target. Kicking off to the right, Temari followed, but Naruto had planned this. The shadow clone he sent, the clone continued right, and while he adjusted and lunged left, slashing at the robed figure, he felt the kunai hit a solid piece of wood. Transfer jutsu. Damn. Looking around, he noticed that the little group had disappeared elsewhere in the village. That was a close one. I almost lost little Akira. That boy is too strong. I have to complete this mission. I must use the girl next time, but how? Naruto collapsed on the floor of the shrine, coughing up blood and feeling like he was out of breath. She must have ruptured a lung. Before he could see if everyone was okay, he fainted from internal bleeding. Temari woke up from the dream, or rather nightmare, looking at her husband on the floor in a pool of his own blood. Naruto. Sakura had noticed the boy on the floor. What the hell happened? Looking around. Tsunade-sama, Naruto's injured. Tsunade rushed over to her surrogate son. She could barely feel a pulse. He isn't going to make it if we don't do this quick. Sakura nodded. Both of them placed their hands over his injury. Focusing their chakra to the wound, a green light radiated from their hands. Come on Naruto, you have had worse injuries than that. pull yourself together. Sorry about the wait, I found a little free time to do this chapter. Most of the actual wedding ceremony is a traditional Japanese wedding. The only part that I made up was the procession of the maidens. I rushed the wedding on purpose, because it is symbolic of Naruto's and Temari's relationship. I hope you enjoyed this chapter, but I promise that the next one will be better. Temari stared at her husband. He had been sleeping ever since they had brought him home from the wedding. Everyone that had been present had no idea what happened. They all claimed to have been in some sort of nightmare, and when they woke up they found Naruto on the floor in his own blood. How could we all have let this happen? It wasn't as though she really cared for Naruto, it was just that she didn't want to fail this mission. Yet she felt that she owed him for saving Gaara from himself, but other than that she didn't feel indebted to the boy. Another thing that bothered her was that he was younger than her, and yet here they were married to each other. Naruto stirred. He felt the presence of another being, but who it was he couldn't discern. When his eyes finally focused, he realized who it was. Sitting up, he realized he was bandaged on his left chest. Temari gave him a quizzical look as he began to pull at them. When he had finally torn the damn things off, she was surprised. She knew that Tsunade was good, but no one was that good. Naruto, are you sure you should be doing that? Asking as unemotional as possible. Yeah, I heal really fast. Besides, what are you doing up at a time like this? One of the first things he had noticed when he had woken up was the moonlight filtering through the window. Why shouldn't I be? Is it not right for me to be worried about my husband? The way she said it felt like she was forced to utter those words. Besides, I wanted to know what happened. So this was the real reason she was up. He knew that he was going to be asked this sooner or later. What was the last thing you remember about the wedding, Temari? Quote, I remember hearing an explosion and seeing smoke coming into the room, but then I seemed to fall into some nightmare. Yes, everyone was put into a genjutsu, well, everyone except me. There were 3 people who claimed to be there to stop the wedding. While everyone was in the genjutsu, I had to fight you to try and stop it. They got away and then I lost consciousness. Temari had finally grasped on what he said. You mean I stabbed you? He nodded. But don't worry about it, you weren't yourself. Besides, here I am all fine. Forcing a smile onto her face, she nodded in agreement. Standing up, she walked over to the other side of the bed. Pulling up the covers, she got in. Naruto had shock written all over his face. Ah, Temari, what are you doing? Well, now that we are married, I think it would be wise for us to sleep in the same bed. Oh, lying back down, he turned over so that he was facing away from her. Looking at her husband's back, Temari could only shrug. It would be a long week to come if this continued. The next morning, Gaara and the rest of the Sand Nin who had come left the village. She and Naruto stood there watching them leave. She knew what was expected of her and she embraced it fully, but for some reason it didn't feel right. So what do you want to do today? Naruto asked, trying to break the uncomfortable silence that had enveloped them. Why don't you show me around the village? Sure, she had been a representative for the Chunin exams, but she really hadn't seen much of the village. Sure. They began their walk in silence. After visiting the Ichiraku's ramen stand, the school, his team's training grounds, and Hokage Monoman. Temari didn't think she could listen to much more about the kid. However, she did notice that some of the older villagers looked at Naruto with contempt and wicked intents. It wasn't that she wasn't used to this, but she couldn't understand why the villagers didn't like him. He had defeated Orochimaru and Akatsuki almost single-handedly, so why was Naruto disliked? Don't let it bother you, they aren't staring at you. She couldn't help but wonder how he had known she was thinking about the villagers. They have always been like this to me. The smile that had graced his face was replaced by a frown. Why don't we go home? Temari just nodded in agreement. When they got back to the estate, Naruto began to head off to the back portion of the house, but Temari stopped him. Naruto, you do know what marriage entails, right? Trying not to be completely blunt about it. Understanding came across his face. Yeah, what about it? Well, one of the reasons for the marriage was to produce offspring that would be strong in the ninja ways. She hoped she had gotten her point across. They may not have said it, but the signs suggest that they would like one as soon as possible. Naruto's frown deepened. She was suggesting that they do it just to make offspring. Yet it was always a hope to have a family, but not one that was forced. I guess you are right, but I don't know. Turning his back to her, he continued on his way. When he had shut the door, she couldn't help but feel frustrated with him. What was his deal? She had practically said, "Here, do it with me, and I will do nothing to stop you." A knock at the door broke her from her imagination. Does he not think I am good looking, or is there something else? Opening the door to see Sakura standing there, she tried to smile, but failed. "Hey Tamari, how are you?" Quote. "Fine, how are you?" Forcing a smile to grace her lips. "I just came by to see how Naruto is doing." "Oh, you just missed him, he went out back. Would you like me to call him?" "No, that's fine. I was also wondering how everything is going." Sakura smiled brightly, hoping that Tamari wouldn't think she was trying to pry into her life. "Well, it has been only one day, so nothing to really complain about." "Yeah, right, I threw myself at him and he denied me." Sakura could see something wasn't right. "You know, you are the first person to ever really get close to Naruto." Tamari looked at her questioningly. "Well, he and I did date, but we never really got too close, because of Sasuke." Sakura fidgeted with her hands. "You really are the first thing he has ever had close to family. He is an orphan." "I had heard that, but I never really knew if it was true." "Well, now you do. Though if you do anything to him, I will find you and kill you." Sakura glared at the sand Kunyachi, smiled. "Have a nice day." Turning her back, she began to leave. Unfazed by the glare and harsh words, she had to ask something that had been bothering her. "Hey Sakura, why do some of the villagers hate him?" Quote. "I don't want to pry into Naruto's life. I will let him tell you when he is ready." With that, she continued on her way. Confused, Tamari headed back into the house. Everything that Sakura had said to her kept going through her mind. Why am I so bothered by this? Continuing the back of the house, she couldn't find Naruto. Where the hell did he go? A few hours later, Naruto sat on the top of Hokage Monument, looking over the village. He watched as light blinked on as people began to get settled for the night. Releasing a breath of exhaustion. What have I gotten myself into? She already wants kids. Feeling a shift in the wind, he smiled. I was wondering how long it was going to take you to find me. Tamari smiled. He sure had grown up since she had last seen him. I was wondering, Naruto, why many of the older members of the village stare at me. He never ceased to amaze her. It was almost as if he could read people's minds. Turning to face her, she looked into his eyes. In them she saw loneliness and pain. They hate me because they think I am the Kyuubi, but no, I am just the container. Tamari gasped. She hadn't expected that one. Yet it made sense as to why after the fight Gaara became more human. Why he strived to protect the Suna. So you are just like Gaara. That is why you two are such great friends. Naruto nodded. I am one of the few people who actually understand what Gaara went through. Now I can understand why you would want to leave now that you know the truth, but I thought you should know the truth before anything was to happen. I can't believe he thought I would leave after he told me something as shitty as that. Gaara was a monster before, and yet I never left Gaara. The more she thought about it, the more she felt sorry for him. I wanted to tell you because I feel a small connection with you. Turning his back to her, he never noticed her walk up behind him. She may not love him, but here was a boy who had gone through so much pain in his life that it tore at her. She felt something inside of her grow slightly bigger. Am I falling for Naruto? No, it can't be. I feel sorry for him. Wrapping her arms around his waist, she embraced. It wasn't an embrace of love or anything romantic, but one of comfort. They stood there for a while. I used to come up here because I could get away from the hate, but also because I could see everything so clearly. Up here I feel at peace. I feel like the world is calm. She looked into his eyes. No more will your eyes show sadness, Naruto. I may not be able to say I love you, but I think I will someday. Placing her lips against his cheek, she gave him a chaste kiss. Tamari, you are an amazing woman. You have calmed the raging wind that was my heart. I may not love you, but I promise you this: I will love you, and I hope that that affection will eventually be returned. You are a precious person to me. I swear this is my lifetime promise. Tamari-chan. 1 week ped since the incident at the wedding. Life seemed to be relatively normal, but what can you really accept from a ninja? However, on this day most of the normalcy that had been attained by the couple was thrown completely out of the window. It began like any other day, but changed when Tsunade called them to her office. When they arrived, they were greeted by a rather irked Hokage. Looking up as the pair entered the office. They make such a nice couple. They may not realize it, but I sense things have changed between the two. What do you want, Granny Tsunade? Slapping Naruto on the back of his head, Naruto showed the Hokage-san some respect. Temari smiled and bowed to Tsunade. Tsunade was impressed to say the least. No other female had ever truly been able to shut up Naruto. Sakura had been able to on occasion, but that was rare and usually involved him being punched a few meters. Here Temari and Naruto had been together for a week and he was already whipped. I have called you here for 3 reasons. From now on you two will be a team. Kakashi will join you from time to time. Both of them nodded in understanding. Second, your mission will be this, Temari, you are to be a substitute teacher for the school for about a month or so. Temari purely nodded, however in her mind all she could think about was the little brats that would be running circle around her. Naruto, you will continue to train and occasionally help Temari at the school. Naruto scowled at Tsunade, who smiled back at his discomfort. Lastly, we have some new information about the attackers at the wedding. Then a puff of smoke appeared next to Naruto. When the smoke dispersed, there stood a person with long blonde hair stuck out at odd angles, however it wasn't as messy as Naruto's. The person was clad in brown leather vest, with a single leather pauldron on his right shoulder. The person had leather bracers on his wrists and under the vest was a black short-sleeved t-shirt. Wearing khaki cargo pants on with the normal kunai holder on the right thigh. The feet were covered by black military boots. He had a mask that looked like some bird of prey. Elsewhere in the village, minutes before, Sakura was picking up the gate traffic report. Hey Azumo and Katetsu, how are you guys today? Bored as ever. Seriously, we wish something exciting would happen. All it has been is boredom. Seriously, I don't know what you are complaining about. Better nothing going on than something bad happening. Sakura smiled at their daily antics. Something never change. A shiver went down her spine. Something was going to happen today. It wasn't necessarily bad, it wasn't good. Walking back toward Hokage Tower, she stopped and looked at the Uchiha compound. It had been a few months when she had broken up with Naruto and gone to Sasuke. He hadn't been a help, he just looked at her as coldly as ever. However, he had been nice enough to let her stay there for a bit until she found her own place. What do you want, Sakura? Turning, she hadn't noticed the Uchiha staring at her. Nothing, Sasuke, I was just pinged by and got caught up in thought. Something was still bothering her about the black-haired ninja. Sasuke, do you remember what I said a few months ago? Usual with the black-haired ninja, he was unemotional. I remember, and I said I didn't feel the same way. Now get out of my sight, bitch. He made a motion to backhand her, but was stopped by someone. The person was clad in a brown traveler's cloak and had a mask that looked like a bird of prey. You know, I thought someone of your prestige would know that hitting a lady in public is not looked upon with respect. Quote. Sasuke growled, who the hell are you? My name is not important. However, what is important is your apology to this young lady. Sasuke smirked, I don't apologize to whores. Well, that would be a pity if I had to kill the famous traitor Uchiha, who pissed on his own village for power. Sasuke jumped back, you bastard. I will kill you. Gukaku no Jutsu. The man stood there. The flames engulfed the man. Sakura watched. She was sure that he had been killed by the flames. No one except Naruto had ever survived the Uchiha's attack. From the depths of the fire, Sakura could feel a chakra build much like that of Naruto's when he used the fox's chakra, only this chakra was pure. Gufu's Suika no Jutsu. A spiral of water shot out of the flames. A black figure in the middle of the water. When the water dissipated, the man stood there. Not only should you not hit a lady, but you should never underestimate one's enemy. Surely that was taught at the academy. Quote, I'll teach you to underestimate one's enemies. Closing his eyes, Sakura knew what was going to happen next. Sasuke was going to use his Sharingan. When he opened them, the telltale red eyes bore at the opponents. The opponent, being the man dressed in brown cloak, drew a sword from seemingly nowhere. Removing the blade from the blue scabbard, the white steel of the curved blade shone in the sunlight. Sasuke pulled out his weapon and charged at the man. The man followed suit. Sakura could let the fight continue, not in the middle of the village. Running for the middle so as to stop them. Shit. The man must have noticed this. Twirling the blade expertly, he moved it so that he held it much like a praying mantis's arms. The two were about to clash, when Sakura made it to the middle. She felt herself being lifted from the ground. Sasuke swung at his opponent. You know you should never get in the middle of a fight. Sakura opened her eyes to see the bird mask above her face. It would be a shame for such beauty to get damaged. Sakura blushed at the compliment. This guy sure has a way with words. Thanks, but I think I could have handled myself alright. Looking around, where is Sasuke? Oh him, I left him back where we fought with some clones. Besides, I have a meeting with the Hokage. What does the Anbu need with the Hokage? The man shifted around nervously. I am not exactly Anbu, but that isn't important. Can you walk? Sakura raised her eyebrow. Really, I can't reveal myself, but it was a pleasure to meet you, Sakura-chan. Once again Sakura blushed. How do you know my name? Besides, how could you use Gufu's Suika no Jutsu? Only water and wind element person could use that, and I have only seen it done once by two people. Pulling out a piece of paper. The paper cut straight down the middle and then got wet. Sakura gasped. It was rare for someone to be two elements. The only person who she knew was like that was Sasuke, but he was only fire and lightning. To answer your second question, I read the report on Yamato submitted after the retrieval of the Uchiha. I really must be going or I will be late. Standing up, the man began to walk away. Could you at least tell me your name? Quote. The man looked back at her and then disappeared in a puff of smoke. But a single piece of pear floated towards Sakura. Catching the piece of paper, she read, "We shall meet again in the near future. I can promise you that." Back in the Hokage's office. Am I late, Hokage-sama? The masked person asked. Who is this man? What does he want? How does he have chakra like Naruto? If you would like, please message me with your ideas. He is not a Jinchuri. Hope you enjoyed this chapter. More pairings in later chapters. I am sorry for the long wait, but I have been slightly busy with other things. I hope you like this one. It was hard to write. Am I late, Hokage-sama? The masked person asked. Not at all, Kamizaki. You were actually right on time. If you wouldn't mind removing your mask, we can continue with this meeting. The person did so and revealed a boy of about the same age as Naruto. Tamari couldn't believe her eyes. Naruto, Tamari, this is. Kamizaki, is that you? Oh, if it isn't Tamari of the fan. He smiled at Tamari. It's been many years since I seen you last. I must say you have grown into quite the desert lily all these years. He smiled as he saw her blush. As always, that compliment worked. Naruto was fuming. That bastard thinks he is hot stuff. Tamari saw Naruto get angry and frankly didn't feel like dealing with him in that state. Kamizaki, it is a pleasant surprise to see you. How are you doing? I've been better, but I wish I came here under better tidings. When I heard about the wedding, I demanded that I come here. Luckily, I was already chosen to come here. However, it seems I was too late. Tamari looked at him questioningly. The attackers are missing Nin from the hidden village in the mountains. I thought the village in mountain country was destroyed after the ceasefire with Konoha, by another hidden village. Naruto asked. Tamari, you have found yourself a smart husband. He watched as Naruto fumed, continuing, that is true, but a few people did make it out before the attack happened. The original village was destroyed, but my father created the village hidden in the mountains with the help of the EU survivors, who eventually returned to the destroyed village and rebuilt with the help of Konoha. Actually, the fourth helped us out the most. He sent supplies and other necessities. We owe Konoha a debt that can never truly be paid for, but we try as best as we can. Quote. Tsunade nodded her head. Kamizaki, I was wondering how you know Tamari-chan. Kamizaki smiled. He pulled out a small piece of paper from a pocket. Focusing his chakra into it, the paper split in half and then got wet. I am a wind and water jutsu user. My father sent me to Suna to learn how to use wind jutsu and then to Kiri to learn water jutsu. You see, in the village hidden in the mountains we are primarily earth elements. However, my powers come from somewhere else. My father didn't want the family name to be tarnished because of me, sent me away. Tamari spoke up. I meet him one day as he was training with my father. We became friends. One day, however, he left the village. I found out afterwards that he wasn't from Suna. I later started my training. She smiled at Kamizaki. No matter how strong you got, I still could beat the snot out of you. Quote. Scratching the back of his head, I never fought back, because I never wanted to see you cry. Enough of this reminiscing. Naruto was tired about hearing about their past together. Am I jealous of this boy because he knows Tamari? No, it is just because she is my wife, right? Kid, that is what they call jealously. Shut up, you damn fox. Tsunade was looking at Naruto with a knowing smile. Naruto, I was hoping you could provide Kamizaki with a place to live until he caught the attackers. Quote. Naruto didn't like the idea, but he could very well say no. Fine, but all I need is a place to set up a tent and I can sleep outside. Actually, that doesn't sound that bad. Tamari raised her eyebrow. No, we can offer you a better place to stay. Smiling, she tried to be as hospitable as possible. She did have to admit that she really wanted to talk to Kamizaki. I guess if you insist on it. However, I must talk with Tsunade-sama in private for a moment. Quote. Tamari and Naruto exited the office. So he is the fourth son. Tsunade looked at him in surprise. How would you know that? My father showed me the fourth's picture when I was smaller and said, son, this is what a true hero looks like. Naruto looks rather like his old man. That he does. Kamizaki, I have to ask you if there is going to be a problem between you and Tamari. Tsunade-sama, when I heard the news of the wedding, I knew that Tamari would be representing Suna. I was happy for her. I never was romantically involved with her. I just used that little compliment when we were children because she was always an unemotional child. It was my way of getting her to smile. I love Tamari as a sister, not anything more. She was there for me in a time that haunts me to this day. Tsunade nodded. It wasn't that she didn't trust the boy, it was just early to be adding a third wheel to this relationship. In certain ways he was like Naruto, however Kamizaki had not had a childhood as terrible as Naruto's, or so she thought. Outside the office, Naruto didn't trust this guy. He has a history with Tamari and it seems like it was something more intimate than just friends. It made Naruto's blood boil, to think of Tamari being with another man. Why does this bother me so much? Because you love your mate. What? You have got to be kidding me. First off, she isn't my mate. Second, things between us are a little bit icy at the moment. Whatever, kid, think that you want, but you know you care for her. Shut up, fox. So Tamari was there ever? No, Kamizaki and I never were involved. We were too young to do anything. I never really saw him as the romantic type. He was always busy training with my father. I think that may have led to small war inside my family, but I could never blame Kamizaki because he wasn't there because he wanted to, he just was there. Quote. Naruto just nodded. He could see the sadness in her eyes. Moving behind her, he held her close. She moved closer, needing the embrace to help her forget the horrible memory that has come back with Kamizaki's return. Looking into Naruto's eyes, she sees the concern he had for her. She smiles and he returns it. The door to the office opens and Kamizaki exits. When he sees the coupe, he smiles. I really am sorry for being here during this time, but I think I will catch him soon. Placing the mask back on, I'll be following you at distance so that they don't know I am here. With that, he left in puff of smoke. When the couple entered the house, Kamizaki reappeared in a puff of smoke. Removing the mask, he smiled at them. Naruto, I must admit you have a nice place. The reports said you lived in a little dingy apartment, but I don't think that this is an apartment. Naruto was confused. What the hell do you mean reports? Quote. Ever since the marriage was announced actually took place, every hidden village has had a file on you too, and those that have been in contact with you since your birth. I have reason to believe that something much bigger than just an I-Nation attempt on your life is going on. Quote. Tamari was slightly worried. What do you mean by bigger than I-Nation attempt? That's what I want to know. All I can do is try to capture the perpetrator and question him. By then they were talking in the courtyard. The wind picked up and Kamizaki disappeared completely, no puff of smoke. Tamari and Naruto looked around. Then Kamizaki reappeared, but with a few kunai to his throat. For Kami's sake, people try not to kill me. Not until I get the bastard. The two ninjas removed their kunai. Exhaling, Tamari spoke first. Try not to disappear and then reappear without telling us. With that, she left the two boys to get ready for bed. because by then it was late. Naruto's stomach rumbled. Hey Kamizaki, are you hungry? Famished, I haven't eaten in about a day since I was getting close to Konoha. The two boys headed off to the kitchen. Many bowls of ramen later, the two were sitting at the table talking up a storm. So Kamizaki, when did you kill your first enemy? I was 6 when I did that, but I would rather not go into details. How about you? I was 12, like you, I would rather not talk about it. Kamizaki nodded. Naruto. He had this serious tone that made Naruto look at him. If you do anything to hurt her, I swear to Kami I will kill you. I don't care who gets me next, but you will not survive if I have to hunt you down. Naruto just nodded. However, on a brighter note, I have a wedding gift for the both of you, but that can wait until tomorrow. Kamizaki, looking at Naruto, it was evident something was bothering him. Naruto, I am really not the best at giving advice, but I can tell you this, you are already doing a great job to breaking down her walls. Temari is not the most emotional or easiest person to get close to with. I know because it took me about a month to finally get her name from her and I was only 5 back then. He laughed. Seriously though, you really got a nice catch. She really is an amazing woman. I know that the two of you will be happy soon. Kamizaki got up from the table, heading off to the room that he had been given. As he headed there, he felt a familiar chakra head to here he had just left. Smiling to himself, they'll be just fine. Naruto felt the presence of another person enter the room, but he didn't turn around. Temari wrapped her arms around her husband and kissed his neck. You two boys done talking? Yeah, I was just about to head to bed. Turning, he looking into Temari's eyes. They weren't the icy depths that he had seen before, they were filled with something that he couldn't put his figure on. Let's go to bed, Temari-chan. Kamizaki had gotten into a routine of following Naruto to his training sessions. Kamizaki couldn't help but laugh at some of the exercises that Naruto performed. They seemed slightly juvenile, but hey, one man's trash is another's treasure, only no physical objects were being transferred. It was rather bothering to watch Naruto and not join in. Stretching his legs, he yawned as he closed his eyes. Today was going to be another boring day. Naruto was getting tired of this. He felt like someone was watching him, but it wasn't friendly eyes. Trying to concentrate, he felt his chakra move towards his feet. Running at the tree, he began his ascent. He knew this was a low-level skill, but it still held practicality. Reaching the top, Naruto gazed at the view before him. He had always enjoyed the view that was presented from the top of the trees. Shifting his gaze towards the earth, he noticed Temari was standing there looking up at him with an amused face. Temari-chan, what are you doing? Quote, what do you mean what am I doing here? You asked me to come out here and train a little. Naruto scratched the back of his head in confusion. He had left the house at 6 and hadn't been home all day. What is going on? Kid, I have a bad feeling about this. Things are not adding up. You're telling me, Temari, I haven't been home all day. When did I ask you to come out here to train? About 10 minutes ago. I was out in the garden and you came home saying you wanted to train with me. Then you rushed out of the house. How could I be in 2 places at once? Then out of seemingly nowhere a voice sounded. That is a good question, young lad. There was a small explosion. Once the smoke cleared, there stood the 3 cloaked people. Up in the tree, Kamizaki slept quite peacefully. He could have slept through a building collapsing if he wasn't inside. The Sato family, snarled Naruto. Right, you are my boy. Now I am here to take your lives, for my benefactors can't have Konoha and Suna forming alliances if things are going to go their way. Temari was surprised that this man would give up so much information. She wanted to get a little more from him. However, Naruto beat her to the punch. Who are your benefactors? Waving his finger. My dear boy, I can't tell you that information, for that would ruin all of the fun. However, I will say this before you die, they are very powerful. Then it hit her. Your benefactors are one of the great nations, isn't? Give the young lady a prize. Now for your prize I will have your lives. Quote. Kamizaki awoke from where he was resting. Noticing that Naruto wasn't the only one there anymore. Temari was with him and so was Sato. Give the young lady a prize. Now for your prize I will have your lives. Quote. Naruto watched as one of the smaller cloak figures walked forward. A petite white hand emerged from the cloak and pointed. It was Temari. Another hand became visible. This one was pointed at himself. Then the small cloaked figure disappeared. Looking around, he saw Kamizaki kneeling over something on the ground. Attached to the underside of Kamizaki's wrist was a blade about 6 inches long, coved in blood. Turning to his right, he saw Tamari looking at Kamizaki with worry in her eyes. Kamizaki, why did you kill him? He was going to kill you, Tamari, so I eliminated the threat. Standing up, the body burst into flames. Kamizaki walked away. What about the children? Are they to die because of Sato's death? Kamizaki stopped. Without turning around, he said, don't worry about it. Tamari looked at Naruto pleadingly. The only thing he could think of doing was hug his wife. So you are saying that they want to invade Fire Country? This is not good, Kamizaki. Tsunade looked worried. I think all we can do is be prepared and hope it doesn't come to that, but really we should try to get more allies. That can only help in the end. Tsunade nodded. What of our friends? Sato has been eliminated. What about his children? Kamizaki smiled. They never existed. What do you mean? It was his ability to control people and make them see what he wanted them to see, however he saw them. Because his real family were murdered by the invaders. So he imagines himself with 2 children as a memory of his family. I have to head back to my village and inform them of these events. Kamizaki, turning, he looked at the Hokage. When will we see you next? Quote, I don't know, but I have a feeling that it will be in the not so distant future. Tamari woke up to Naruto smiling at her, finally awake, sleepy head. Looking into his eyes, she could see that he was worried about him. Tamari made her move. Naruto was surprised by her boldness. Naruto had sat up and pulled Tamari in for a kiss. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was unexpected. Why don't you two get a room? Was said from the door. The couple broke apart to see Kamizaki leaning in the doorway. Shut it, Kamizaki, retorted Tamari. Kamizaki shrugged. Well, I'm heading back home. You're leaving us? Naruto looked at him. What are you going to miss me, Naruto? What would give you that idea? Kamizaki shrugged and continued to leave. When he had disappeared, Naruto turned his attention towards Tamari. So where was I? Oh yeah, right here. He kissed her again. Tamari finally felt something. It was nice to have this feeling and she would always treasure it. She was Naruto's and Naruto was hers. She wouldn't have it any other way. When she got to the kitchen, she found a note. Opening it, it read, Dear Tamari, I am sorry about my sudden departure. Tsunade will fill you guys in about Sato and the goings of the world. I have a couple of suggestions though. Number 1, let your emotions out, don't hold them back. I know what the ninja code says, but you aren't a ninja all the time, just most of it. Second, don't stay at home. If he goes out training, go with him. Third, you make a great couple. Both of you are pig-headed and strong-willed. I hope you continue your journey towards happiness. Sincerely, Kamizaki. P.S. The eggs were a little burnt on the first day. Tamari smiled at the footnote. He always knew how to get to her. Hey Tamari-chan, I'm going to go train, see you later. Quote, wait Naruto, I'll come with you. I hope that this chapter was better. I am sorry, but at the moment I don't know where I am going to go from here. Tamari opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling. Yesterday had been draining physically to say the least. She and Naruto had trained from the time Kamizaki had left to sundown. She wasn't sure what drove Naruto to such ends, but she sure as hell was going to find out. Turning her head, she watched her husband sleep. She had to admit he did look pretty damn cute as he slept. However, she really wanted to know about the whiskers. Slowly she brought her hand towards his face. Slowly she began to stroke the markings on his face. She couldn't help laugh as Naruto began to smile in his sleep. When she was satisfied by his reaction, she rolled out of bed and headed for the shower. She couldn't help but feel things between Naruto and herself were changing. It wasn't a bad change though, it just was different because ever since her father had become distant and her brothers had changed, she hadn't had this feeling. Naruto awoke to one of the most amazing feelings he had ever had. Someone had been stroking his whiskers. No had ever done that, but that didn't matter. He had an idea of who had done it, when he heard the water in the shower turned on. Smiling, he got out of bed and headed for kitchen. Today felt like it was going to be a good one. When Tamari got out of the shower, she was greeted by the smell of breakfast cooking and Naruto out of bed. Smiling, it wasn't usual for him to be out of bed at this hour. Heading down the stairs, she saw that Naruto was at the stove cooking something. Naruto turned around and saw her. Smiling at her, he turned around once again and continued what he was doing. How did you sleep, Tamari-chan? Like a log. Some of those exercises you do are really draining. I don't know how you can do all of those repetitions, cause I am sore as heck. However, I had a great idea. Quote. Naruto continued to cook, mumbled something like go on. I was thinking we could go out and look around the town today together. Sure, I can take you to Ichiraku ramen stand. Okay, I guess. Quote. A few hours later and a few more bags carried by Naruto, the couple was standing in front of Naruto's favorite restaurant. Tamari looked at him suspiciously. Naruto-kun, why did you bring me to a ramen stand? Quote. Because Tamari-chan, this is the famous Ichiraku ramen stand that fed me for years. They sat down. When the cook turned around, he was surprised. Naruto, how are you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. I see you have brought a friend. Scratching the back of his head, I'm doing fine, old man. I would also like to introduce you to Namikaze Tamari, my wife. Well, congratulations, Naruto. Ayame will be pleased to hear it. As for tonight meal, it will be on me. Thanks, old man. Tamari looked at her jovial husband. He was the life of a party. She couldn't help but smile at him, yet at the same time something was bothering her. Naruto-kun. Yes, Tamari-chan. I was wondering why the villagers were looking at you funny that other day. Oh, that. Releasing an exasperated breath. It's because I am the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Quote. Tamari was surprised to say the least, and yet it made everything come together. So this is why he and Gaara get along so well. Tamari-chan, I can understand if you don't want to be with me. I know the pain it is. Tamari silenced him with a kiss. When she pulled away, she looking into his eyes, my brother is Gaara of the desert, enough said. When they got back to the compound, Naruto held the door open. Thanks, Naruto-kun, but man, am I sore. Quote. Hey Tamari-chan, I have a great idea. You should go to the hot spring after breakfast and relax. Naruto, that's a great idea. Then something clicked in her head. So Naruto-kun, will you be joining me? Quote. A large blush crept into his face and he walked towards the front door. Once Tamari had gotten out of her normal clothing and into a robe, she made her way to the hot spring. It seemed that for every step forward she and Naruto took, then they would move back about 3. Exhaling in confusion, she slid the door to the hot spring open and let some hot air escape before quickly closing the door. Removing the robe that she had worn, she slid into the hot water and gasped at the sensation. Finding a spot to sit, she lay her head back to rest. Her eyes shut after a few moments. After a bit, she heard the door slide open. Opening her eyes, she saw Naruto standing there with a towel wrapped about his waist. I thought I might take you up on your offer, he said matter-of-factly. Tamari slid over to give him a little room. Naruto just stood there, raising one of his eyebrows. Tamari smiled at him. Naruto, you know eventually I'm going to see you, so I don't really know what you are all worried out. Naruto blushed a crimson red. Just at the moment that he dropped the towel, a large plume of steam sprang up from the surface of the water. Next thing Tamari knew, her husband was sitting next to her. Shaking her head at him, she moved closer to him. She could feel him stiffen as she edged closer. When she was practically touching him, she rested her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes. Naruto had a look of, what the hell am I supposed to do right now? Giving up, he did the only thing that he could think of, resting his head upon hers. Tamari smiled. You know, Naruto-kun, today was special to me. I feel we are finally understanding each other. When did I start calling him Naruto-kun? Naruto smiled when he heard this. I know, Tamari-chan, it was special for me too. There was a familiar person's voice came from the front gate to the compound. Naruto, if you are home and can hear me, Tsunade would like you and Tamari to come to the hospital. She needs your help. Quote. Tamari looked at Naruto. Naruto-kun, who was that? Sounded like Shizune Nichan. I guess we had better go. Tamari only nodded. When they got to the hospital, they were rushed up to the ER. Pushing the doors open, they saw Tsunade standing over someone on the table. On the other side was Sakura. Looking down at the figure. Tsunade-sama, what do you need? Tamari asked. Tamari. Naruto, I have something to show you. She moved away from the person she had been standing over. Upon seeing who it was, Tamari broke down. Rushing over to the bloodied and mangled body, she cried, "Kamizaki! Kamizaki!" Tamari ran to the bloodied body. Taking his head in her hands, she cried over her friend. "Tsunade-sama, what happened?" Tsunade exhaled. "We have no idea. He came to the gates this evening like this. I am surprised he was even able to get here in his condition." Quote, "What is wrong with him?" Tamari looked at her through tearful eyes. "He had a ruptured spleen, multiple stab wounds from kunai and swords, a concussion, and that isn't even the worst of it. He has so much internal bleeding that we were only just able to stop the major wounds. Sakura has been working on him ever since he came in. She had to call for my help. The only thing that surprised me is the fact that all of his bones are intact. Most people would have had multiple fractures. There is more than meets the eye with this boy." Tamari looked back at him. Naruto couldn't see her like this. Wrapping his arms around her, she fell into his embrace. "It will be alright, Tamari-chan. I know he will pull through." Sakura looked at Naruto and Tamari's sadness filled her eyes. Tsunade saw this, but didn't say anything. "Naruto and Tamari, Sakura and I still have work to do. I would appreciate it if you two left." Quote, Naruto just nodded. Tamari walked over to Kamizaki and kissed his forehead. Turning back to her husband, they both walked out of the room. Tsunade looked at her pupil. They seemed to be doing alright. Moving back to where she had been before Naruto and Tamari had come, she continued to work. Sakura just nodded. "Sakura, I know that you are going to find someone like that. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if he was in this very hospital." Outside in the waiting room, Naruto and Tamari had found a spot to sit. "Tamari-chan, are you sure you are alright?" "Naruto-kun, I am sure of it. I am just worried. Kamizaki was one of the few people to actually get close to me before Gaara had his issues." Quote, Naruto nodded. He would have been lying to himself if he didn't like the fact that she had kissed Kamizaki. "There isn't, nor was there, anything romantic between Kamizaki and myself. We were just good friends. I am sure you understand what it is like to be all alone in the world. Kamizaki was like that before coming to Suna." Naruto knew that feeling all too well. He may not have known why Kamizaki was alone, but he knew that Kamizaki was special in Tamari's eyes, so maybe he should just let it go. A few hours later, Tsunade came out of the ER. Making her way to the waiting room, she stopped right before opening the door. She smiled at what she saw. Sitting in chairs side by side were Naruto and Tamari. Tamari had her head resting on Naruto's shoulder, while Naruto was resting his head on her head. Both were out cold. Tsunade turned around and walked away, trying not to disturb the moment. Tamari's eyes shot open. Jumping up and running into the room, she never noticed Naruto fall and hit his head on the arm of one of the chair. "Naruto, quit messing around. Kamizaki isn't in the ER. We have to find out where he is." Quote, the couple basically ran to the receptionist upon finding out that he had been moved. They rushed to where they had been told. When they had found the room, Tamari burst through the door. Sitting upright in the bed was Kamizaki, though he had bandages on a substantial portion of his face. She could still see the blonde hair poking out from them. Sakura was standing next to the bed talking to Kamizaki. However, when he had heard Tamari crash through the door, his attention turned to her. "Apparently you have been worried about me." Quote, Tamari hugging him, "You idiot, of course I was worried. You come here half dead and all you can say is you must have been worried." Shifting nervously, Kamizaki smiled, "I guess I was slightly idiotic." Quote, "Ah, Kamizaki, you are awake," said Tsunade. "So you mind telling us what happened?" Kamizaki nodded. "I was on my way back to the village hidden in the mountains. When I saw smoke coming from that direction, I increased my pacer only to find the village had been burned to the ground and all of the villagers and ninjas have been slaughtered." "Who would have done this?" asked Naruto. "It was the Hidden Rock Village. They were behind Sato in his attempt on your lives. They didn't like that fact that I was sent to kill Sato. Looking at his bed sheets, I have to leave Hokage-sama. I need to kill the Tsuchikage." Moving to get out of his bed, he was slammed back in. Looking up, he saw Sakura's arms holding him down. "Kamizaki," Tsunade began, "you are not to move. There are two options you have. You can either join the Hidden Leaf Village or help us, or you can be considered an enemy nin and either be executed or left in prison." If you decide to join us, we can move forward and prepare should the hidden rock attack. The choice is yours. Kamizaki sat there for a minute before saying anything. I guess you leave me no choice but to join you. Quote, good, now all we need is a place for you to stay until you can find a suitable place to live. Sakura, doesn't your apartment have a second room? Sakura was about to answer, but Naruto spoke up first. Granny Tsunade, since Kamizaki is staying in Konoha, why not have him stay with us? Tsunade was quick with her answer. It almost seemed to Kamizaki that she had thought this through, because as Kamizaki recovers he will need the help of a medical nin. Quote, it made sense to Temari, and Naruto nodded in slight agreement even though he didn't like the idea of Kamizaki with Sakura, but who was he to say anything? Sakura couldn't believe that her mentor had done this, but only nodded. Besides, she didn't even know this person, let alone share her apartment. Alright then, it is settled, Sakura. I think you should get Kamizaki straight to your apartment because some of these fumes might irritate the wounds he has received. Tsunade left the room. Everything was going according to plan as far as she was concerned. The walk back to Sakura's apartment was quiet for the most part. It may have been due to the fact that Sakura had to make sure Kamizaki didn't fall over and reopen any of his wounds. When they got there, she leaned him against the wall as she opened the door. Once inside, she laid him down on the couch. Thanks, Sakura-san. Sakura smiled. It's really no problem, Kamizaki-san. It is not often that I have a guest in my apartment ever since Naruto got married. Turning, she began to walk away. You miss him, don't you? Sakura turned to see Kamizaki smiling at her. I envy you. I have never known that feeling, but it is of no matter. Closing his eyes as pain coursed through his body. I'll get you some pain relievers, Kamizaki. Turning, she walked away, whispering to himself, once again you have my thanks, Sakura-chan. You have saved me a debt that I cannot fully repay. Elsewhere in Konoha, can you believe Granny Tsunade? She has Kamizaki staying at her apartment. Who give her a right to tell Sakura what she must do? Temari had had it with his complaining. Naruto-kun, I'm sure Tsunade-sama had many reasons why she had Kamizaki stay at Sakura's. Besides, why are you so worried? She eyed her husband with one of those looks that says say something wrong and you are on the couch for a month. I'm just worried about Kamizaki. Sakura has this thing that she absolutely hates perverts, and besides she doesn't even really know him. Quote, Temari laughed at Naruto. Kamizaki couldn't even get girl to kiss him. Albeit he isn't that bad looking, he just has absolutely no experience when it comes to those sorts of things. Now I think you have worried enough for one night and I think we should go to bed. Quote, I hope you are right about him, Temari-chan, I hope you are right. Sakura slowly opened her eyes. The events of last night came back to her far more quickly than she would have liked. I wonder how he is doing. Getting out of bed, she opened her door to see Kamizaki sleeping on the couch. Well, he isn't half bad looking. Shaking these thoughts from her head, she went to get a shower. About a half an hour later, she walked from her bedroom to find the couch vacant. Oh shit, where did he go? Sakura, Naruto, and Temari had been up and down that same area at least a dozen times. They were tired. Where the hell did that bastard go? Cursed Naruto. I never would have thought Kamizaki would have left. I thought he was too injured to move, Temari added. Well, when I find him I am going to rip him a new one. Sakura couldn't believe that he had left. His injuries were still fresh, and if they opened up he would get infections. It wasn't that she really cared for him, it was the feeling of responsibility that she had to make sure her patients survived. Come on, Sakura, we need to bring a report to Tsunade-bachan. He what? Tsunade was not happy to say the least. We need to get Anbu on top of this fast. Sakura was surprised when she spoke up. Tsunade-sene, Anbu can't do anything, he isn't a ninja of the leaf. Besides, what are we going to tell them to put in the bingo book? He has blonde and blue eyes. That could describe a large number of people. There was a knock on the door. Tsunade had had it. Not now, Shizune. Apparently this is not a good time to be here. Walking through, well, actually more of a hobble, came Kamizaki. Naruto was the first to speak. Where the hell have you been? I didn't think you cared, Naruto. Smiled Kamizaki. Slap. Looking kamikaze, say Temari, staring at him in disbelief, her arm extended past his face. Where the hell have you been, Kamikaze? We were worried about your wounds. Kamizaki cowered in fear. After all of this time, she still can be scary. I'm sorry if I worried you all. I woke up when I heard the shower water running. I got up and got breakfast. I thought I would try and not be a burden to my host. When I returned, no one was home, so I left to find a house since I will eventually be a ninja of this village. Apparently, everyone thought I had left town. Quote. Tsunade glared at Kamizaki. He did have a point. No one said that he had to stay as Sakura's, but still. It would have been nice of him to tell her where he went. Kamizaki, you shouldn't be moving around. Your wounds could open up. If they get infected, it will only take more time for you recover. Sakura said. Thanks for the concern, Sakura, but I have been through worse. Looking at Tsunade, he smiled. Hokage-sama, if this little meeting is concluded, I wouldn't mind leaving. I have a house to find. Tsunade just nodded. Once Kamizaki, Naruto, and Temari had left the room, Tsunade turned to Sakura. So what do you think about all of this? I really don't know. He seems to be genuine, yet at the same time it feels similar to that of the incident with Sasuke. I just can't tell what his motives are. Tsunade nodded. That is true. He seems to want to help, yet like Naruto, he hates just sitting by and watching. There is something about him that even his file does not mention. Quote. What is it, Tsunade-sensei? Who his mother is or was? I would like you to find out, Sakura, because there is a feeling that I just can't shake. Sakura walked through the village. Her mind stuck on what Tsunade had said. How was she going to find out about Kamizaki's mother? Then a thought hit her. When she got to her destination, which was the Namikaze compound, she knocked on the front gate. The gate opened to reveal Temari looking a little troubled. Hi Temari-san, is everything alright? Yeah, just still a little bothered about earlier. How can I help you? Sakura didn't know how she was going to get Temari to tell her anything. She figured if she was straightforward about it, Temari might say something. I was wondering if you could tell me a little about your history with Kamizaki. Tsunade would like more detail. Why didn't she come here herself then? Temari's brow furrowing. I really don't know why she wanted me to gather the information, but I am just trying to do my job. Quote. Temari sighed. Come on in. Once inside, they sat in the main room. I met Kamizaki when I was 7, he would have been 5. He had come to Suna to be trained by my father, due to the fact my father was one of the best wind users. You see, Kamizaki has an elemental affinity of wind and water. I later found out that if a person is born in the village hidden in the mountains that doesn't have an affinity for earth, they are shunned by the village. Since Kamizaki's father was the leader of the village, this was almost a dishonor to the family. I don't know where he gets his affinity, but I think it might be from his mother. Did he ever mention his mother? Quote. No, only that she had disappeared after his birth. He never was given any love when he was a child. His father was cruel to him. Whenever I mentioned his father, he would get this look in his eyes that would bring tears to my eyes. Naruto has faced far worse than Kamizaki, but to have your family alive and yet they still shun you because of your affinity or your mother, is just horrible. Thanks Temari, this was a big help for me. Quote. Anytime Sakura-san. Have you tried to talk to him? No, not yet. Sakura stood up and left the house. Kamizaki was running through the forest at the fastest speed he could go. Ever since his shadow clone had contacted him saying that Naruto, Temari, and Sakura had been out looking for him, did he? Most of his injuries had healed, but he still had a few wounds that had a chance to open. He wasn't careful. He had gone back to the village hidden in the mountains not for revenge but hoping to find a few possessions that might have survived the burn. He had also had enough time to bury the few bodies that he had found. It had not been emotionally draining, which was how he preferred it. The last thing that he did before he left was stop by the temple to the water dragon. Here his life forever changed. The temple had been ransacked and defiled. Once the people of the village prayed to the water dragon, who was the guide of those souls that couldn't find eternal rest. It had been a place of silence and serenity. It had been beautiful. The fact that this had happened brought terror to his eyes. When he had left, he had figured that he would never return. Landing on the wall to Konoha, he looked at his new home. Well, I guess I better go find a place to live. Naruto was sitting in the garden enjoying the sunset. The cool breeze caressed his brow. Smiling, he looked in the direction of where it came from. He saw Tamari standing in the doorway for the main room. It is time for dinner, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded. Looking at his wife lovingly, he noticed something was bothering her. Tamari-chan, what is troubling you? Was that easy to read now? Nothing, Naruto-kun. However, I had an idea. I thought we might be able to go to Sun and visit my brothers. Naruto thought about it made sense. Why not? I haven't seen the cage in a while. Tamari just smiled. She had known that he would like the idea. We will just need to speak to the Hokage to get the approval. Naruto nodded. I had wanted to learn more about his Tamari-cha, and this was a perfect opportunity. I borrowed the idea of the water dragon from Jade Empire. Excellent game. When the couple had arrived at Suna, they were greeted by a small band of ninjas. They were taken to the cage's office, where they met Gaara. Gaara took a few minutes to study the couple. When he saw them glance quickly at each other nervously, he smiled inside his head. Things seem to be going fine. Well, it is good to see the two of you. What brings you to Suna? We thought that we would come visit you for a small vacation. Tamari said, smiling. Gaara noticed this immediately. This is not the Tamari that left only a few months ago. I am glad to hear that Tsunade isn't working to two of you too hard. However, I am slightly busy at the moment. If you wouldn't mind, I would like to talk to Naruto alone for a moment, then I'll let you two leave and enjoy yourselves. We can have dinner later tonight. Tamari nodded and bowed. Exiting the room, she took one last glance at her husband. When she had left, Gaara turned to Naruto. What have you done to my sister? Naruto was immediately taken aback by this. I don't know what you mean, Gaara. Quote, Naruto, that woman is not the Tamari I remember. So what have you done to Tamari? Still confused by this, I made her happy. I think, Gaara, we love each other, or that's so wrong? No, I am happy for the two of you. I had always wanted Tamari to find someone that she loved. Now she has you, Naruto-san. Please don't let me keep the two of you apart. Naruto was still confused as he left the room. He would never understand the Kazakage. The first place that they visited was the house that Tamari, Gaara and Kankuro had and presently live in. The house was small yet cozy. We used to live in a larger house when my father was the cage, but when he died we moved here. It looks like Gaara still lives here. Naruto just nodded. He was enjoying the sight of where his wife had come from. It made him feel like she could trust him, and that was a great feeling. Wrapping his arms around her, he held her close. I can understand why he still does. It must remind him of you, and that is a good thing. Tamari turned and looked at her husband's face. He smiled and she returned it. Leading him to her former room, she opened the door. The walls of the room were white and on them hung fans of different colors and sizes. There was a desk and a bookcase filled with books and scrolls. A small window allowed some light into the room. Naruto walked up to one of the fans. Its blades were a bronze color like that of the sand, and there were 3 yellow dots with lines extending from the dots, similar to Tamari's. That was my mother's before she died. Why don't you use it? I would rather not ruin it because it is precious to me. Quote. Naruto nodded. They exited the room. Tamari closed the door behind them, taking one last glance at the fan on the wall. Standing on the wall of Suna, Naruto watched as the sun dipped below the horizon. The colors of the sunset still fresh in the sky. Tamari was sitting with her back resting on his legs. Naruto looked down and smiled at his wife. The more he thought about it, the fact that he could call her his wife made him all the happier. What are you smiling about? Tamari gazed quizzically at her husband. Sitting down next to her, he placed an arm around her shoulder. Just thinking about how lucky I am to have you as my wife. He kissed her on the forehead. He pulled back to see her smiling at him. Naruto-kun, I want to say thank you for coming with me on this trip. Do you really think I wouldn't have come? Looking into his eyes, probably not. She rested her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes. When they had gone and found a place to eat, they made small talk. Naruto seemed to be rather interested in her life before the Chunin exams. However, once the food was gone, they head back to the place they were staying at. Naruto fumbled with the keys. He finally located the correct one. Opening the door, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Turning, he looked at his Tamari-chan. In her eyes, Naruto saw something that he hadn't ever seen before. Due to his lack of experience with these sorts of thing, he didn't know what it was until she had found his lips with hers. Falling back against the wall, Tamari deepened the kiss. Asking for entrance into his mouth, he gave her permission. After a moment or two, the couple came up for air. I think we should bring this into the room, suggested Naruto as he tried to gasp for air. Tamari nodded, trying to get her breath back. Tamari led the way. Naruto closed the door and locked it. The couple did what any newlywed couple does. Naruto and Tamari stayed in Suna for longer than they had expected. They had actually gone as far as to ask Tsunade for extra time off. Tsunade, being one who could figure things out rather quickly, allowed it, knowing that things seemed to be working out. However, after about 3 months after they initially had to return, they arrived home. Walking through the gate to Konoha, they began their journey towards the Namikaze residence. So Tamari-chan, how did you like our little vacation? It was great, Naruto-kun. Giving her husband a kiss on the cheek, she smiled as a slight blush appeared. I wonder how Iruka-sensei is doing. Would you mind if we stopped at the school before we go back home? Tamari shook her head. They made their way to the school to see Kamizaki standing surrounded by all of the children, whose ages ranged from 2 years old to 5. Tamari couldn't help but laugh at Kamizaki. He never seemed like the fatherly type. Hey Kamizaki-san, what are you doing? Yelled Naruto. Kamizaki looked up and smiled when he saw his best friend and husband come his direction. What does it look like I am doing? Returning his attention towards the children, he made a hand sign and a puff of smoke appeared. Once it had dispersed, Kamizaki was no longer in the position he had been previously. The children looked around for him. So what brings you two home? Naruto and Tamari looked to see an old man, dressed in robes and a hat pulled over his eyes, standing next to them. Tamari instantly knew it was Kamizaki. Well, we had to return eventually. Tsunade would have dragged us back. So we decided we would return, shrugged Naruto. Tamari felt something stir within her stomach. Kamizaki, I will be right back. Quote. Naruto watched as Tamari disappeared into the school. She had been doing that a lot lately. I never understood why she always does that, mainly in the morning. Kamizaki just raised an eyebrow. Tamari was looking around the school for the nearest bathroom, but couldn't remember where it was. It had been so long since she had taught here. Then Sakura came out of one of the room carrying a box. When she saw Tamari, she smiled. Tamari-san, when did you get back? Tamari tried to act like nothing was going on. Just a few minutes ago. Naruto is outside with Kamizaki. Looking around frantically for the nearest restroom. Sakura was puzzled by Tamari's actions. Tamari, are you alright? Yes. Well, no. You see, Tamari unconsciously placed a hand on her stomach. Then it felt like she was going to throw up. Placing her other hand over her mouth, she gave a heave. Sakura knew immediately what was going on. Dropping the box, she grabbed Tamari's free hand and led her to the restroom. Outside of the school, Naruto was pacing back and forth frantically. What is going on with Tamari-chan? Kid, are you seriously that dim-witted? What do you mean? The Kyuubi sighed. Naruto continued to pace until he felt a hand on his shoulder. Looking back, he saw Kamizaki smiling. Don't worry, Naruto. Tamari is a strong woman, she will be fine. Whatever may be going on, you two will work through it. Just then Kamizaki felt a tug on his robes. Looking down, he saw a girl of about 3 years with brown hair and brown eyes looking up at him. Kamizaki-sensei, I found you. Quote. Kamizaki picked up the child and looked at her. I'm not your sensei. The child looked at him confused for a moment, then declared, yes you are. She giggled. Kamizaki smiled at the child and in a puff of smoke appeared back in his normal clothing. Raising the child high over his head, the girl giggled even more. How smart you are, Keiko. Bring the child back down to eye level. He brushed his nose against hers and she continued to giggle. Sakura and Tamari were exiting the school when they saw Kamizaki holding Keiko. When Sakura saw him, she smiled. He is so good with kids even though his childhood was ruined. Flashback. Sakura had finally found Kamizaki sitting on a log out by Team 7 old training grounds. Kamizaki, there you are, I have been looking all over the town for you. Quote. Kamizaki looked up. Smiling, he greeted Sakura, hi Sakura-chan. When he realized what he had said, he silently berated himself. Sakura, Chan, why did he call me Sakura-chan? Kamizaki, I was wondering if you could tell me about your childhood. Quote, sure. I had a normal childhood. It was until I was given my first piece of chakra paper. When I put some chakra on the paper, it tore in half and then got wet. My father was not happy with this, so he sent me away to study under the Kazekage in Mizukage. I had my first kill when I was 5 and I didn't return to the village until I was 12. When I returned, I was constantly sent out on mission. I would return to the village and then be sent back out immediately. This was because I wasn't an earth user. Sakura looked at him. He looked pained as he told this. What about your mother? Did she approve of what your father did? She wasn't around until recently. You see, technically she isn't of this world. What do you mean? My mother is the water dragon, the goddess of the water and the guide of dead souls. I don't know the terms of how it happened. All I know is one day a girl with blue hair arrived on my father's doorstep and left me in his posses. Sion saying, this is your son. So I am the bastard son of a goddess and a monster. Tears were coming down his face as he said this. Sakura pulled Kamizaki into a hug. End of flashback. Sakura was so deep in her thoughts that she failed to notice Tamari was talking to her. Sakura-san, are you okay? Yeah. What did you say? I said Kamizaki is really good with kids. I have never seen this side of him before. Sakura smiled. Yeah. Tamari and Naruto left the school after spending most of the afternoon there helping Kamizaki and Sakura with the children. Kamizaki and Sakura were cleaning up the room when there was a knock on the door. Sakura spoke up first. Come in. The door opened to reveal Sasuke. When Kamizaki saw this, he immediately got in between Sakura and Sasuke. When Sasuke saw what Kamizaki did, he questioned it. Who are you? I'm Kamizaki, substitute teacher. Even though he knew who it was, he had to play along. And you are? I'm Sasuke Uchiha. I would like to speak to Sakura alone. Quote, Sasuke, if you have something to say then you can say it in front of Kamizaki. Sasuke just nodded. Sakura, I want to say sorry about what happened a few months ago. I shouldn't have done that. I also want to tell you that I want you back. If there is anything that I can do to have you back, I will do it. Sakura moved her hand to her stomach. Looking at Kamizaki, she could see the sadness in his eyes. She had told him about her infatuation with Sasuke. Her gaze returned to Sasuke. I am sorry Sasuke, you are a little too late. When Tamari and Naruto had finally been able to relax back at home, Tamari turned to Naruto. Naruto-kun, I have something to tell you. Quote, Naruto smiled at his wife. Yes, Tamari-chan. Naruto-kun, I'm pregnant. Naruto and Tamari were sitting in the back room enjoying the sunset. Silence hung thick in the air, but it wasn't the awkward silence. It was more of the comfortable, understanding silence. Naruto gazed lovingly at his wife. She was due any day now and Tamari was as demanding as ever. Yet at the same time Naruto swore that she was as beautiful as ever. Raising one of his eyebrows asking the question, Tamari nodded in response. Naruto lowered his head and placed it gently upon her stomach. He felt the kicks and chuckled to himself. How is the little one? Asked Tamari. If the kicks are any indication, the child will be strong like its mother. Smiled Naruto, giving Tamari a quick kiss on her lips. He returned his attention to the sunset. That may be true, but I hope that it is as cute as its father. Quote, we will see, my heavenly lily. Tamari sighed and laid her head on his shoulder. Her stomach rumbled. She looked up to see Naruto roll his eyes. What will it be this time, my heavenly lily? She thought about it. I think ramen will be fine, but none of that instant crap. Quote, Naruto sighed and got up. Heading for the kitchen, his thoughts strayed to Sakura. It wasn't often that he thought about it, but he hadn't seen her recently. Now that he thought about it, he hadn't seen her in a month. Across town, Kamizaki was making his way to his apartment. He had bought the thing after a week at Sakura's. It wasn't that he didn't enjoy being with her, it was just the fact that he really didn't know her at the time. When he got there, he unlocked a door. Grabbing a GL, he headed for the sink. Turning on the faucet, he got his GL of water. His thoughts began to stray to a day many months ago. Flashback. It was a week after Naruto and Tamari had gone to Suna. Tsunade had asked Kamizaki and Sakura to be a substitute teacher while Iruka was away on a mission. But on this particular day Sakura and Kamizaki had been held up. It had been a nice day earlier, but come the late afternoon storms were rolling in. When they had left the school the rain had come in. It wasn't one of those warm rains, but more of a cold one. When they got to Sakura's apartment she fainted while trying to unlock the door. Kamizaki placed a hand on her forehead, it was burning up. She might have a fever. Normally Kamizaki would not have entered her house unless invited, but he didn't think that she would be able to take care of herself. Carrying her into the family room he tried to gently wake her up. When he didn't know what to do. He would have removed her clothing, but that might not be such a good idea. The only thing he could come up with was use his own body heat to keep her warm. He pulled her up against the left side of his body. Grabbing a nearby blanket he covered her up. He must have fallen asleep because when he woke up Sakura was sitting there looking at him. I'm sorry. I'll be going. Standing up he went towards the door, but stopped when he felt her grab his shirt. Please don't go. Cough. Please stay. When he saw her eyes pleading at him to stay, he turned around. All right, but you should go and get into some dry clothing. It won't help you to have soaked clothes on. Quote. Once she had changed and she had eaten some food, she sat back on the couch. She waited for him to sit next to her. When he sat down she laid her head on his shoulder. They would remain like that all night and into the next morning. End of flashback. Signing once again Kamizaki walked into his family room to be greeted by the sight of Sakura Hanuro sitting on his couch, smiling. Kamizaki smiled back. Naruto was getting the ramen ready. Stirring in the noodles, he thought about how his life was going to change. He loved the idea of being a father and hoped he could be the best father possible. The idea of having a family was exhilarating and scary at the same time. Naruto. Upon hearing this Naruto stopped what he was doing. Running back to the room he had come from. He saw Tamari. She was looking at him, scared. Naruto the baby, it's coming. It was a beautiful day in Konoha. However, the nice weather was not being enjoyed by two men, who were standing in the graveyard. Naruto and Kamizaki stood there looking at the headstone in front of them. The silence hung heavy in the air, neither of the men moved. After a few moments Kamizaki put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto looked at Kamizaki. No words needed to be said about it, it was understood. Kamizaki sighed, you know she wanted you to live a happy life. Quote. Naruto didn't say anything. She knew the risks, but went through with it because she was a strong kunoichi. Once again the silence wasn't broken. Kamizaki just sighed. He seemed to do that more often these days, ever since that day a week ago, when his life had changed dramatically. It may not be my right to say this, but I know for a fact that she loved you. Turning around, Kamizaki left Naruto there. Naruto just looked at the headstone, he held back the tears that were forming around his eyes. After a few moments he laid the flowers down on the grave covering the name. All that could be read was, loving wife and mother. Naruto turned and walked away. He was at a loss for words. The walk through the town was just as silent as like it was in the graveyard. Kamizaki watched as a few of his students played in the playground. Their laughter filled the air, yet at the same time the silence overwhelmed the laughter. Looking around he saw a young child being led by his father. The father said something to the child and they both laughed. A young girl was playing with a puppy. She giggled when the puppy licked her face. Kamizaki looked at Naruto. Naruto seemed to be ignoring it. Before they knew it they were at the Namikaze compound. Naruto entered first and Kamizaki followed. Kamizaki walked through the courtyard and into the back room. Sitting in a rocking chair was Sakura and in her arms was a baby girl. The small amount of hair that could be seen was a light pink and her eyes were closed. Kamizaki looked at Sakura and smiled. Smiling back, she asked the question that had been bothering her for quite a while. How is he taking it? I really am not sure Sakura-chan, I don't know him like you do. Sakura nodded. They heard the door slide open. Both looked up to see Naruto enter the room. Walking over to Sakura he smiled. How are you doing, Sakura? I'm doing fine, how are you? Naruto sighed tiredly. Naruto, you should be happy. I don't know. Turning he looked at scenery that could be scenery from the room. He watched at a bird flitted amongst the branches of a cherry tree. A few of the blossoms broke free and flew through the air. They landed in the river. A fish popped out and ate the blossom. Naruto was so focused on it that it wasn't until a presence was right behind him he turned and looked into he aquamarine orbs that he loved. Tamari-chan, are you sure you should be up? She smiled. I thought you would like to hold your son for a little while. In her arms was a baby boy. The eyes were closed. The hair that could be seen was a blonde like his mother's. Gently handing the baby to Naruto, he smiled. He finally had what he wanted the most in the world, a family. Turning back towards the scenery, Tamari wrapped her arms around his waist and rested her head on his shoulder. Kamizaki and Sakura walked up to his side. Sakura was holding the baby girl. Kamizaki placed an arm on Sakura's shoulder. She smiled at him. They watched as the sun set and enjoyed the multiple colors that were dyed in the sky. The wind picked up. At the graveyard, the flowers fell over and revealed the name of the departed.